Hello and welcome to episode 133 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing quest to uncover the reasons people find this game so endlessly fascinating. Rod Murray's my name, and along with John Huggan, we bring you these interviews from every corner of the golf community as we explore the myriad reasons people fall victim to the golf sickness. This episode, it's Huggy in the hot seat with a guest with a bit of a twist. Huggy, the thing about golf interview subjects tend to skew more towards the, how should we say it, mature demographic, but you've been proving yourself a disruptor. You've been out talking to a young person. Tell the listeners who it is you've been talking to.
Yeah, well, Lucas Herbert, young Australian, up and coming, now on Live Golf, of course. But Lucas is he's a proven winner already. I mean, he won a couple of times on the European Tour before he disappeared off, and he won on the PGA Tour. So, I mean, it was an interesting decision for him to go to Live. We get into that a little bit, but it's a bit younger than my normal demographic. Yeah, yes. You're right about that.
Yes, indeed. Dude and bro and those things, they're not our language, Huggy. He's been a player of particular interest, I think, here in Australia because we've kind of grown up with him. There was always a story about Lucas. He drove overnight to get to the Australian Open qualifying as an amateur after finishing high up in the Australian Masters. That sort of thing. He's got a knack for the limelight and he enjoys it, doesn't it? I always felt there was a little bit of similarity. Great talent, Lucas Herbert, but a little bit of similarity in that way with Greg Norman. He enjoys the limelight, doesn't he? And he enjoys talking and a bit of banter, and he's not so afraid of controversy.
Yeah, he didn't shy away, certainly from any of what you just described, and he certainly didn't hesitate when I asked him to do the podcast. I actually did a profile of him a few years ago now, detailing his rise from almost total obscurity to getting himself on the tour. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for the way he just basically got his chance, kept making cuts, did great things at the level he was at that time, and got himself on tour basically in a very short space of time, which was hugely commendable, I thought.
Yeah, indeed. A more talented player than I gave him credit for early in his career, but I've eaten big pieces of humble pie publicly about that in the past because he really is an impressive player, no question about that. I guess the two topics that most people want to hear from Lucas on, and you've touched on one, the other would be the Australian Opens. He's been somewhat vocal when he's been down here in the past about the format of the mixed Opens without giving away too much because we want people to listen, Huggy. Did he have some interesting things to say about both Live and the format of the Australian Opens?
He did, and let's leave it at that.
Yes. Excellent. Put it this way. It won't be the usual tripe you hear from a lot of players who trot out the prepared responses, I'm sure. Overall, what was your take, Huggy? You kind of alluded to this. He's an interesting generational player in that whole Live thing, which we will look back on in 20 years. Who knows where it's going to end up, but we'll look back on it. He wasn't among the first to go, but he was among the first of those established players at an early stage in their career to go to Live, wasn't he? It really was an interesting decision in many ways, and I know that he touched on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's obviously money involved. He didn't shy away from that either. He doesn't shy away from much.
No, he does not.
When you come to think about it, which just makes him a great subject for a podcast. I always enjoy talking to him, and I enjoyed talking to him. We did this in Saudi Arabia at the back end of last year at the closing event on the Asian Tour, and as usual, he had plenty to say.
Indeed. And I agree. I always enjoy talking to Lucas as well, which is different to saying I agree with everything that he says or sometimes even anything that he says.
I'm not saying that.
No, yeah. But he is an engaging personality, and that definitely comes through in this interview. Thanks for joining us to intro it, Huggy. Looking forward to having a listen to Lucas Herbert.
My pleasure.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time round is a well-kent figure in Australia and certainly elsewhere these days. Lucas Herbert. What was and is the thing about golf for you?
G'day, Huggy. I don't know. I think I really enjoy just literally the challenge of getting better at something. And golf is obviously something I'm good at and something that I probably have the ability to make big improvements quite quickly. So I just love, I really enjoy practicing and watching, things develop and things improve, and then seeing it in tournament play just the progression of like I couldn't hit that shot 6 months ago, but now I've got the ability to, and just that addiction to process almost is like the thing that I love about it. And golf's just one of those games where no matter how good you get, you can always get better. So it's just a never-ending sort of feed of the addiction, I guess.
Has that always been the case, though? Even in your early days when you picked it up first, was that the attraction?
Yeah, I think so. I was that kid at school that thought that PE was the Olympics. Always took sport so seriously and was so competitive with everything. So I just always just dreamed of playing golf full-time professionally. So it's interesting. It's almost been difficult for me the last couple of years to reset goals because realistically the things that I wanted as a kid, I'd gotten to a stage where it was like, well, I am what I wanted to be forever when I was a kid. I wanted to be a PGA Tour player. I wanted to be traveling the world playing golf full time, and
that was always Plan A. Then there was never a Plan B.
Yeah, Plan B was to make sure Plan A worked.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah,
like it was almost a struggle to reset goals to find something new because the thing that I'd wanted forever was I'd finally gotten there.
And beyond that, though, I mean, there's plenty of things you haven't achieved yet. Surely,
Yeah. It's been a bit of a process to sort of find what it is that motivates me to play well next, to go back to the well and keep grinding away, keep playing better golf. And, Liv's been a great opportunity for that as well, I think, because it's presented me with a whole different landscape of what golf looks like and what we can do. So it's like I'm only 29, so it's weird to say that it's freshened things up, but it's definitely given me a fresher outlook on, what impact I can have in the broader scheme of things with the game of golf.
I mean, that's true. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, the lifestyle that you have and had, I mean, you sit down at the start of every year and I'm sure you think, well, I'm going to plan my schedule out, blah, 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 which everybody says. But it pretty much is going to look the same year to year, or did before Liv came along,
I mean, it would change a bit before Liv. You'd get a bit of a rough idea, But it would depend a lot on how you were playing and what you'd gotten into, what you hadn't gotten into, what you needed to play in to get into other stuff. Yeah. It was ever changing, but now it's almost better in a way now in some aspects of if you get a wedding or a birthday or something like that lands on an event, there's not this pressure to not play that event to go to whatever event it might be. It's now very black and white. It's out of my hands to these decisions. I think prior to this year, it was you could pretty much skip any event you wanted to be able to to make something happen, and I think people knew that, and it became a tough decision at times, and you had to feel like you were very, very selfish. Whereas now it's a bit out of our hands.
I mean, you've got a contract basically in place. I mean, Paul McGinley argues quite strongly that that's the mistake that the other tours have made over the years. That it would be better for the tours if the players were under contract in some way.
Yeah, I do think
there's two sides to it, obviously. But
there definitely is. I think overall it would be better for players to be contracted. From a whole rounded point of view, I think it would be better for players to be contracted.
Not just from planning. Everybody could plan better,
Yes. Yeah, correct. You look at events could market to sponsors a lot easier when they know who's going to be there. And especially, you look at a live model now, it's like the event in the UK in July next year, they already know that Phil, Bryson, Brooks, Cam, everyone will be playing on Sunday at 2:30 in the afternoon. They can plan whatever sponsor activities they need, whatever they want to do, they can plan all that now. Whereas, you look at a PGA Tour event, you look at any other tour around the world, essentially, you're in a position where, like, you don't know whether they're going to play or not. They could pull out late because they just don't feel like playing.
Yeah, I mean, the tour will go to a prospective sponsor and say, well, and the sponsor will say, well, okay, I'll give you $3 million or whatever it is. Who am I going to get? And they, well, we don't know.
Yeah. And also, they might not make the cut.
Yeah, exactly.
Sunday might roll around and he hasn't made the cut. So I think the knee-jerk reaction from players would be, no, we like our freedom. But I've felt it's been quite nice this year to know exactly when I have to play and when I'm not playing.
Yeah.
There's, the decision's out of my hands. And I think from a planning, marketing perspective of the tour, to make our product better, to showcase the tour better, I think it's better for everyone to do it that way. And I think other tours would benefit from doing it. It's tough. It's one of the things that makes golf unique and what players do enjoy out of it. But yeah, catch-22.
Yeah. Are there any downsides to your decision to go to Live? I mean, in terms of hassle from, press, public, media, all the rest of it. And in terms of your career as well, I mean, it's harder to get into majors. There's downsides to it, certainly for the moment. Hopefully that will change.
Yeah. There's very few. Like everyone that's asked us about it this year, I would say, the two things that the two negatives are our access to really high quality tournament venues gets taken away, especially within the US, because of the stranglehold the PGA Tour has on a lot of those venues.
Yeah.
We're not going to
some of the courses are not that great, are they?
We're not going to the venues we'd prefer. No. I think we've done pretty well to make good events out of the courses we've gone to. But we'd certainly like to have had access to some really high quality venues.
Yeah.
And just like on a personal side as well, equipment manufacturers haven't really been out at events. They're starting to come out to them a little bit more, but it was so easy playing the PGA Tour to just walk into the truck on a Tuesday afternoon and grab a new driver that, has more of a fade bias because the coals are working left to right that week or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It was very easy to do that, whereas, now, we're hand carrying all our balls and gloves and stuff to events, which sounds like first world problems, but it's
your poor thing.
You got to be much more prepared coming to the tournament. There's just things get thrown up at last minute that you just can't prepare for. Whether it's like different grinds on wedges for softness that week, or like a different driver. You might be at altitude. You want more loft.
These are things that you think about that ordinary golfers, it's way over their heads, really. Yeah.
So and even like repair stuff too. If you happen to do your head in and snap a shaft or something like that, it's harder to get them fixed. So they're literally the only two things for me that have been a downside to going to Live. Everything else has been incredible.
Attitudes are certainly softening, aren't they? I mean, the world is coming together. It's slowly, but it seems that way anyway. I mean, there was a lot of harsh things said right at the beginning when guys jumped to Live. That seems to have disappeared almost.
Yeah, it feels like... my analogy is, so I've had dogs all my life at home with a family sort of thing, but we got a new dog when I was about 12, and she was maybe like 6 months old. So I had her for a couple of years, and then we got another dog, and when we got the other dog, she was maybe 3 months old. So little pup, and the 2-year-old, has thrown her weight around a lot as the not older sister, but the older dog of the family, throwing the weight around and pushed the little pup around and this sort of thing. And then you give it 12 months, 18 months, and the younger pup grows and, starts to outgrow the older sister.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the weight's been thrown around the other way. And not a lot of sympathy shown when it comes to that. So I just feel like I don't have siblings, so it's not a great comment for me to make around siblings, but it just feels like an older brother, younger brother sort of situation where the other tours are much more established. They've been running things for a long time, and they were throwing their weight around realistically the way they probably should have. I think their members would have been pretty pissed off at them if they didn't try and stop Liv from taking the stranglehold it has on worldwide golf. But I think the younger brother now has started to get big enough where there's a bit more respect being shown, and it's a bit easier to maybe coexist now rather than just.
What's your feeling on the ideal scenario at the end of all this? What would you like to see after it's all done and dusted?
From a holistic point of view, you want the best players in the world playing against each other more often. I think everyone agrees on that. My ideal would look something like however many teams we end up having, whether it's 13, 14, 15, however many teams that is. I personally think it would be great to have one team that is a PGA Tour team that floats as, it floats around as a PGA Tour team. So we play our 14 events with LIV, and the PGA Tour sends out 4 players each to each event to play on that team.
Right. Different 4, not necessarily the same.
They can be the same 4 if they want every time. It doesn't matter. But they can change.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
They can have different captains, whatever you want. But that's your floating PGA Tour team that plays on LIV, that represents himself on LIV. And then at every tournament on the PGA Tour, we have, I don't know how many it would be, 1, 2, 3, 4 invites that are open to LIV players if they want to play. If sponsors are going, we really want Dustin to play, we really want Cam Smith to play, we really want Brooks to play. There's the option for those guys to play off invites there, and they don't get FedEx Cup points. They don't get. We don't need to participate in all that side of things. But if you're going to watch the Memorial Tournament next year, you would love to see Joaquin Neiman, Cam Smith, Brooks, Bryson play against Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, these sort of guys that both. Right now, it's tough to get a real read on who's a better player. Who is the best player in the world right now? Half the guys out here, they're not ranked, so they're not playing against the other best players in the world on the PGA Tour, so we can't put any sort of measurement on who is the best player in the world right now. So I think, personally, that would be a great result, but I don't think both sides would agree to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right, but it's interesting. I haven't heard that scenario before, but it makes some kind of sense, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a dreamland because I don't think the sides would agree on it. But that would be what would be a good result out of all this. I think.
Yeah, I'd be surprised that. Well, I think I know what your answer to this will be, but has the money that has come your way from LIV, has it dampened your competitiveness in any way, shape, or form?
No.
Or do you see that in others? Maybe, I don't know.
I
know how competitive you are, so I'm not surprised to hear you say that.
I don't think so. It was definitely,
even subconsciously, you're comfortable that one motivation has been eliminated.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're at a point now where you're not playing for the money. I think you would at one point in time, 2-3 years ago, you'd be looking at putts going, this putt's worth X amount of dollars. Whereas I think now you're looking at positions on the leaderboard. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, it is what it is.
I would argue a good thing. I mean, we all know you're professionals, that the clue's in the title, but I think people want to see the purity of the game override the financial side of it as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it felt tricky last Sunday playing the Aussie Open because on one hand, I'm trying really hard to win coming down the back nine, but on the other hand, you're also got in the back of your head, there's 3 spots for the Open Championship there. So it becomes a tough little conundrum there. And I think the purity of LIV Golf is we're all making stacks of money no matter where you finish. So, down the stretch there, if that's a LIV tournament, there's a bit more incentive to be going at, to be more aggressive and trying to really pepper the lead rather than, I just need to make sure that I don't make a bogey or a double because I need to finish in the top 3 or whatever.
Different mentality, isn't it? Yeah. Is that a tough switch to make? It sounds like you had a little bit of trouble with it.
Yeah, it was tricky. I was still trying to win. I didn't until probably the last 2 holes. I wasn't really worried about the spots in the Open. I was like, well, I want to win. But it's tough to know what's right and what's wrong there. I think it's a purer form of the game now, in that we're getting a better measurement over who's the best player, rather than players being caught up in how much money they're making and playing their own game in the back of their head. It's tough. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that would disagree with me on that.
Well, and you could argue as well that you maybe want a bit of everything across 12 months. You know, I don't want the same scenario every week. I mean, that would be boring. You know, no matter what you pick, which one you pick. I mean, you've just described maybe 2 or 3 different mindsets, for that terrible phrase, that you have playing depending on what tour or what event you're in. I mean, I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it also feels like if you watch the RSM Classic, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, with the guys who are fighting to keep the tour card, that almost felt like cruel to watch. You know, you like.
But you could argue as well that that's the essence of competitive sport. It's not meant to be a everybody the same. You get what you.
Yeah, but I think
deserve,
there is a difference between watching guys try and win and lose versus, like, imagine if we walked in outside here into the media tent and every one of these guys' bosses had told them, had told their riders that if you make a mistake this week, you're done.
Yeah.
I don't think that's compelling to watch. I think that, like, that's almost cruel to watch people just sweating and
Are you saying that if I write a bad story on Friday, I missed the cut and you'd have to go home? You know.
Well, if you're on a point of, like, me and your boss are sitting here watching over your work this week, going, if he makes one mistake, his job's done. Yeah. Not he's missed a cut and he's got another chance next week. Like, his job's done. He's been he's being fired. That's essentially what you're doing watching that. And it is part of our game, but it almost felt cruel watching the guys hovering around that 125 number. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm a bit more of, like, I want to watch the guys who are trying to win. If I'm going to turn on and watch my TV, I want to watch the guys who are trying to win. You know, it was great watching a guy like Alvis Smiley win the Oz PGA because he didn't have a job to lose. You know, he's now, I think he's playing Nedbank this week. He's all of a sudden,
it's basically a 3-year exemption because he gets the whole of this year and 2 more.
Right. So you've just watched a guy create all these opportunities out of nothing. That was fascinating and amazing to watch versus watching a guy who's got a job trying to keep it. Like it. Yeah, I don't know. It feels cruel watching that 125 number in the last event.
Yeah. Well, I've been to a long time ago now, but I went to the tour school in Europe. And, I mean, I was a halfway decent amateur and I could have turned pro. And I walked around that week in a cold sweat thinking that would have been me. Yep. And I probably wouldn't have made it. I wasn't that good a player, but that's the level I was at. I would have made it to tour school maybe. But it was horrible watching these guys. Yeah. The suffering that was going on. I mean, really. What?
Yeah. I even look back on my own career and the lengths that I went to be able to get to where I am now. If you take me back to being 18 years old and go, and basically, like, would you live it all over again? I'm at the point of, like, I don't know that I'd want to go back through and sweat all the times that I did. Like, it was great that I've come out the other side now, having done it. But, like, would I want to live that stress again? Like, I don't know that I want to do that again. Hopefully I don't have to go and do that again.
No, it's funny you bring that up because in my intensive research for this this podcast, I went back and read a story that I'd written about you a few years ago, and there was mention of dark days sitting in hotel rooms in Canada and China and not knowing what the future held. And then you got on a run. I mean, you did it in an incredibly commendable way. I mean, you basically came from nothing, played well enough to get into the next one, and well enough into the next one, and on it went, and you made yourself a card holder by doing it that way, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But how do you look back on that time now? I mean, those hotel rooms in Canada and China, I mean, what does that... Seems like a long way off, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm just grateful because you don't play well that often in golf. You don't have a lot of great weeks. And I had very good weeks when I needed to. When I got given an opportunity, I was just lucky enough that I played well at the right times to be able to get to where I am now.
Yeah.
Even with the whole live stuff, like if live comes along 5 years earlier than it has, I'm now struggling to get. I'm doing everything I can to push myself to get onto this Ripper GC team because there's probably 3 or 4 guys already established on that team.
Yeah.
Vice versa, if it comes along 5 years later, maybe I'm too old for that spot on that team, and all of a sudden they're looking to get younger guys on there. So there's been a lot of things in my life where, like, yeah, I practiced really hard and I worked for it, and obviously, that wasn't luck, but there was a lot of times where it was lucky that
timing's good, yeah.
Timing's worked out really, really well. So, yeah, I don't miss those days of playing on the mini tours and basically betting everything you had on yourself at various times. I'm almost struggling now to get out of that mindset and like, all right, let's put some money in the bank. For the first 7 or 8 years of me being a pro was just reinvesting. It was like, all right, I've made some money. How do I reinvest that in myself to then be able to make more money or get onto a better tour or get into bigger events? And it was. I'm very happy I don't have to do it again. Put it that way.
I'm sure. Yeah. But were there ever any doubts? There must have been some low moments because that story I read. I mean, there was definitely some low moments in that story.
Yeah, you had times. You definitely had time. Like everyone's had low points. You've had times, but I think you would go away. You'd go away and have a proper think about it, and you're like, well, I would prefer to I'd prefer to die knowing that I wasn't good enough versus die wondering.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of always the mindset. It was, I think, overall, I think the overarching theme was like, I think I'm good enough to call it a top 50 player in the world consistently if I give it everything I've got. And I would prefer to give it everything I got and find out that I'm not good enough rather than try and cut corners here and there to save some money or, hold back and be scared of failing. I just wasn't a fan of sitting on the rocking chair at 70 years old and having those thoughts in my head. I'd prefer to know.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly finding out. Again, with the couple of stories I'd done on you earlier, you talked very fondly of your amateur days. Can you talk a bit about that and how much the best memories of that? You did pretty much everything that you could do in amateur golf, that Eisenhower and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, in some ways, like I laugh looking back on who I was when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. I think everyone probably does, but just how how far your sense of reality was away from what was actually going on. And I'm probably going to sit there at 50 and think the same thing about me now. But yeah, just outlook on life was so different. Just had such different priorities. But yeah, like we had some great amateur days of tournaments we'd play in, host families we'd get put with, things we'd do, stories we'd create. Like they were just so fun and such innocent days. I don't want to go back and live them again, but I'm so glad I did get to live them because it was such a fun part of life. Some of the things we got to do. And
what were the highlights that you look back on now?
For me, I think one that I hang my hat on is finishing second at the Eisenhower Trophy, because that leaderboard has gone on to become very successful. Like John Rahm won. I finished second. I think Victor Perez finished second, who's obviously had a great career up until now. Alejandro Tosti, I think, finished second. Also a great career up until this point. I'd have to go back and look. The names in that leaderboard past that were really good, and a lot of them have gone on to be phenomenal players. So I think it's really cool to be a part of that. Even we went back to Rich Harvest Farms. I went back to play there last year, and they had the board up there as Sweet 16, and I was like, oh, I'm on that board, and then looked at all the names in there. I was like, that's a pretty good list to be a part of. So there's a few like that are really, really cool. I would have almost probably slipped a little bit on how competitive I was when I got to be a very good amateur. I think I lost focus of that a little bit and didn't sort of didn't have enough like dog in me to win. Because I would have liked to have won more as an amateur and had my name on more of those trophies to leave a lasting kind of legacy there. I had a lot of great finishes, but never actually won much. So I think that's maybe my only regret from my amateur days, that I wish I had done more.
Can you maybe a tough question, but when you look back at the top level amateur golf that you were playing at and the names that you mentioned, and there'll be guys who played at that level and didn't make it, what makes the difference, do you think?
I think at that level, it was the guys who could adapt to the life of what a touring professional looks like. If you look at those world amateur teams from 2014, that Eisenhower Trophy, I don't think there was anyone there that didn't have enough talent to make it to this level.
They all can play, but some make it, some don't. It's the eternal question, isn't it?
And at that point, you were playing with the house's money, being an amateur. You had nothing to lose. Once you turn pro and it's your own credit card that you're swiping, it's a little different. And some guys handle that, and some guys don't. Some guys handle the travel, some guys don't. Some guys handle being away from home for 12-week stretches. Some guys don't. It's not like it's a choice. It's not like some people. You just don't get to choose whether you like this life or not. It's just you get thrown in the deep end and you find out pretty quick whether it's for you or not. And that would be the difference. I look at our Australian team that year, Jeff Drakeford and Ryan Ruffles. I was lucky to make that team. Those boys were better than me. But Jeff didn't want this life. Jeff he went there, did that for a couple of years, and he was like, I'm a country boy in Australia, and I enjoy doing that a lot more than being away from.
Nothing wrong with that.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I'm pretty sure he's happier than he ever was trying to do that life. And then Ryan's
he's a bit of a mystery. I mean, he was supposed to be the next star, at one point, and it hasn't really happened, not yet anyway. So,
Yeah. I'm pretty close to the rough, and I have my opinions on maybe why it didn't work out for him. I don't know that I want to share him on here, but
that's fair enough. But
phenomenal player.
He was. I mean, I saw him as a youngster. He was incredible, and
I think he still has the ability to make it. He's only 25 or 26. He's young. He's young.
Yeah.
For people to write him off as a failure now, he's young. He's still got loads of time. So I hope he does figure it out. I think, he's obviously doing a lot with YouTube golf right now. And I think it's a bit of a waste of his talent. I think he's a much better player than being a YouTube golfer. But hopefully he realises that and actually believes that as well.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up it went viral. You did this with Mike Clayton, the persimmon driver thing. Talk me through that. I mean, how did you enjoy it, and how did it come about, and what did you make of it, basically?
It's probably bred a lot more from that as well. So, yeah, I mean, Clay's had a bee in his bonnet and probably still does for a long time about equipment and the ball going too far.
You're speaking to another convert here as well, of course.
Yeah, and I understand it from his point of view that he's a golf course architect. He's trying to design something that
you can place without hitting wedge to every green. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I just think, the whole understanding of golf course design is Clates doesn't care if I go to Royal Melbourne and shoot 59. But if I do it hitting it to the spots that the course is designed for me to hit it to, he'll be the biggest supporter you've ever seen.
Yeah. How it's done is the key.
Yeah, and that's probably this whole debate has probably just been poorly communicated, because if I hear any PGA Tour player talk about the subject, everyone gets caught up on scoring. Everyone gets caught up on
I don't have a problem with low scores either.
Yeah,
it's the fact that you're hitting wedge to every hole.
Grow the rough and make the greens firm and fast. And they're completely missing the point. Try and find a good example here of Royal Melbourne. You look at the second hole on the west course of Royal Melbourne. It's a par 5, plays as a par 4 for most of your big events. That hole was designed to be a challenging tee shot over that bunker. You'll be able to carry the bunker, but you had to hit a good one to get it over. Yeah. And then If you get it to the green, great. But if you missed it in the left bunkers, it was hard. If you missed it in the right bunkers, it's really hard. If you lay it up, it's a pretty simple wedge to the middle of the green. It's sort of how a par 5 should play it. It's like somewhat tricky if you're trying to get there in 2 with a 3-wood. But if you want to hit out to the left, lay it up to 100 yards, hit it in the middle of the green, you can make a pretty simple 5. But now it's a driver and an 8-iron. It's a different an 8-iron into a green is a different challenge from a 3-wood, and it's just not testing you the way the architect wants to test you. So yeah, you're going to make a lower score, but that's not the point of it. Like Clates is happy for you to make. If I go back and play with some hickory clubs and a feathery golf ball and make 3, he's going to be my biggest cheerer.
Yeah.
But people are missing the point on that. So, and I think if we go back to your original question of that whole persimmon drivers and Bellata golf balls and that sort of thing, I think for a lot of us right now who are high level pros, it can come across as like insulting in a way of like we're not as good as what these guys used to be. Because
I've always been very careful about when I've never suggested that there's any talent difference. But you guys, you're obliged to, for your profession, is to find a way to shoot the lowest score. And I don't blame anybody. I lament the fact that, and I use this line a lot, that if nobody plays like Seve or Lee Trevino, the game isn't better. It's different. It's not better. I would love to see you guys challenged more in different dimensions. You become very, very, very good at an increasingly narrow form of golf, I would argue.
Yeah.
And that's my problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you give kids a spoon tailor-made driver and that's what they learn to hit balls with going up, and they take that to tournaments and they play tournaments, your swing speed isn't going to get over 110 mile an hour because you can't, because you need to keep the thing in play.
Yeah.
So kids are getting faster now because at 6, 7 years old, they can swing driver as hard as they want because there's less of a focus on hitting it in the middle of the club face and making a very, very technically great golf swing, because you don't have to do that now because technology is so good. So kids are learning differently, and that's why they're coming out now where, I saw Nikolai Hogard the other day is ripping 200 mile an hour ball speed drivers, and he looked like he did it with ease. Like that, when I turned pro, 180 mile an hour ball speed was like, oh, you're quick. Now it's like 180, middle of the pack.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, for guys that turned pro 20 years ago, and it's what happened for guys that turned pro 20 years before that, and it will continue to happen.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with somebody who hits it further getting an advantage, because you should get an advantage from that. My argument is, though, that the advantage has become so overwhelming that it's disproportionate. You get far too much of an advantage from being long now. You should get an advantage, but not as much as you get now. That's how I feel about it.
I think it feels like everyone's long. It doesn't. No one's short in the game anymore.
No, not at your level. No,
like
you can't survive.
There's no one anymore. You used to get guys like.
Well, nobody's going to get to number one in the world like Luke Donald did.
No,
but he made every putt he looked at for 18 months.
Right.
That was the only formula he had, but
no one's going to do that anymore.
No.
So I don't know that there's so much of an advantage for being long, but you now need. I think the one thing I would say is there's a big difference now between, I look at Kingston Heath on the weekend just gone, and we played it into the wind on Saturday, and I've ripped driver and I hit it 245 yards. And I was in the rough and I hit a 3-wood and I couldn't even get there for my second shot. It's par 4.
Yeah.
The next day the wind's the other way and we're hitting driver and a pitching wedge in.
Yeah.
And I think guys would have hit lob wedge in there. I think there's I don't think you would have seen that 30 years ago. I think the difference would have been, you're hitting driver 3-wood in, but you're hitting driver 7-iron downwind. I think there's a much bigger dispersion now between downwind the longest players and into the wind the shortest players. So it makes a golf course much harder to set up and how it plays.
That's why. I grew up on a links on the east coast of Scotland. And it was windy a lot, and the yardage is. I mean, call me, this is maybe extreme, but I would ban yardages. I think that some of the nuances of the game have been lost because you can pitch up at a course, and I'm sure you've done it many times where you haven't even played a practice round, and you play by the numbers. That to me, the game loses a wee bit of something when that's the case. It's too much. It's too scientific and not enough artistic for me.
Yep.
I plead guilty to being old-fashioned, but that's the way I feel about it.
No, I'd agree to it. I think the best golf courses test you to a point where it's like the guys who have played it the most times know it the best. And the old course at St Andrews is the best course in the world. And the more you play that golf course, the better you understand it, the better you will play.
Yeah.
That no one's really going to turn up there the first time they've ever played it. If it plays no wind and it's kind of soft, it's a different story. But if you're playing it for the first time and there's 20 mile an hour wind and it's firm, you are not going to play well the first time around there because you don't know where you're going.
You certainly need a good caddy, that's for sure.
But you don't know it. And some of the shots that you have to hit, you can't even make yourself hit it there because you just can't. How are you supposed to do that? Like the 17th hole. How are you supposed to get yourself to hit it? If the wind's off the right, you're starting it over the hotel. How are you supposed to get yourself to do that? You've got to be a robot to do that because the natural instinct of you as a golfer is like, I'm going to hit this left to make sure it's in play. So that's the best golf courses that you find in the world, and then on tour is you should like. It was frustrating last week at Kingston Heath. Riggs Johnson said to me on the third hole on Saturday, he goes, I didn't get a practice round on this golf course. I'm playing this by the yardage book. And the golf course was so soft that he could do that.
That was disappointing, wasn't it?
It was so frustrating because I've played so much golf at that course. Pewey, my caddy, is one of the best caddies out there. He's walked it. We played there 2 years ago, and he walked it flat out then, and then he's walked it 2 or 3 times earlier in the week, last week, and knew it like the back of his hand. And I was still telling him how to play the golf course come the weekend because I'd played it so many times. I'd seen so many shots with so many different pins that it was like, I know how this is going to work. And for someone to come in with no practice round and beat me around that golf, I didn't play well.
No.
But to beat me around that golf course was so soul-destroying because it felt sacrilegious against the sandbell.
Yeah, because a dimension of the game was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to, you just had to know those lines off tees or how...
And the bounce and the roll of the ball is part of sandbelt golf, or
correct.
should be. Yeah.
This is the approach to the 17th green there. You've never played a practice round there. You've never seen the golf course. And you're gonna go and hit something over the hill there on 17 and know where to land it. Give me a spell. But you can do that when the golf course is soft. You just land it next to the hole.
Can I ask you about the Australian Open in general? I mean, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of controversy in which, I've contributed to. I wrote a very long piece in Golf Australia magazine about where the Australian Open has been and could be again. It should be I would argue, one of the top 10 events in golf in the 12-month calendar year. How do you, and it's nowhere near that now. It's sad to see what it's become in my mind. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it sucks to sit here and be critical of it, but it was probably one of the worst Aussie Opens I've ever played. And that's sad because it was at 2 great venues.
Yeah, the courses are great. Yeah.
There was a lot of things we were promised that weren't delivered on.
You want to give me an example?
Cam and I were stood outside the clubhouse on Thursday morning, locked out of the clubhouse. Cam was actually locked out of the gate. He couldn't get into the course,
we were Kingston Heath, is it?
Victoria. We were locked out of the clubhouse because the clubhouse wasn't open yet, and we were hour and 45 before our tee time.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things. There was a lot of things that cost no money that they didn't do well. I didn't see a leaderboard. Final round, I start tied for the lead. I didn't see a leaderboard that actually showed me any value until the 15th green. No. So there was a leaderboard between the 4th and the 5th that was broken. I could sort of see the TV coverage in one of the screens in the fan village off the 9th green, but I couldn't see scores. I could sort of just see what the leaderboard looked like. I could see like Curtis has obviously played well, so I saw a short name tied with me, and I was trying to work out who was the short name that would be tied with me. Yeah. We didn't actually see a leaderboard until the 15th green, and there was TV coverage on that, so I didn't know. I could see the first 5 names. I couldn't see anyone past that. Leash told me they pulled out their phones to look at the leaderboard, which sort of shows you where that's at. Yeah. Little stuff like we didn't have drinks like in a tub on every tee box. And like bins, trash cans as well, were nowhere to be seen. So nearly every tee box, there was just a collection of stuff in the corner of the tee, which is just a poor look. Yeah. Things like that it doesn't cost any money to do that better, but they just weren't taken care of. Yeah. And we were, the golf course, it rained a lot on Wednesday, but I lived in Melbourne for 5 years. And I'd never seen a sandbelt course that soft in any conditions. And like, it was a lot of rain, but I've seen that much rain on a golf course as well. And I've never seen it that soft because obviously it was prepared a lot before the rain turned up. So, Cam said what he said on Wednesday, and then it rained a lot, and he looked a little silly for that. Yeah,
but that was the route, wasn't it? The rain, as you say. I mean, you've got far more experience of it than me, but on sand-based courses in Scotland, I mean, you can pour water on one day, and it's gone the next because it just soaks in. I mean, that's the point. It's
they have wetting agents they can put on the greens that will not allow them to soften up like that. And they weren't instructed to use them.
Yeah, it's a shame because
even the time slot of the year, it works for the men. It doesn't work for the women. Yeah, the women have flown in on Wednesday morning.
Well, Hannah and Minji had absolutely no chance.
No chance.
Yeah, I mean,
it works better for them in February.
Yeah, of course.
And it was I'm still unsure if the women's event had to go into a playoff. What were they going to do? Because there was 10 men's group after that.
That's a good point, yeah.
What were they going to do?
Yeah.
So the women deserve to be showcased on their own. Like Hannah, Minji, Sue, Steph Kiriakou, Gabby, they all deserve an event that showcases them properly on a golf course that's set up to showcase them properly. Yeah. And the men deserve an event that's going to do it properly.
It's almost impossible to set a course up for guys at your level and for the women. I mean, I carried a few years ago in the Vic Open for Katrina Matthew from Scotland. And the last round, and I've said this to Mike Clayton and he kind of poo-poos it a little bit, but I think I'm right because I was there, is that she spent the whole day hitting 6 irons to wedge pins. The pins were set up for guys playing like you do, hit second shots with your wedges, and she was headed to 30 feet all day because of that. Yep. And it wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and it wasn't as interesting to watch.
Well, I mean, Victoria was set up soft, obviously after the rain, and there's pins where Leash and I are coming in with wedges, and it's 4 feet from a false back edge. So if you're hitting a 6-iron, and you can pitch it in the middle of the green and run it up there, but we're not going to pitch it anywhere near, like we can't pitch it past the hole.
Yeah.
So you pitch it hole high, we're spinning a wedge back 20 feet. We can't get it near that hole. That's not a good test for us. That's a great test for the girls. It's not a good test for us. And that's the thing. Like, it can maybe work at the Vic Open in some spots. That's the best I've seen it work. But
even then, as I said, it was me that pointed it out to Mike, and he goes, "Well, yeah, but it just didn't work."
Correct.
It just didn't work.
They're different tests of everyone's game, and that's. We don't want to play an event where the women win with 4 under and the men win with 20 under, and vice versa. So let's have them in separate weeks where it can work. And we have such a great opportunity with that Australian Open to make it unbelievable.
Yeah,
three spots for the Open Championship. You've now got a host of guys on live that aren't exempt in the Open. It's a massive opportunity. Even talking to Harry Higgs, he's saying guys that don't have exemption into the Open that are on the PGA Tour should be figuring out a way to get over to the Australian Open to play it, because it's the best chance they're going to have all year. They're only qualifying events. Like I spoke to him. I think he said he had the John Deere Classic the week before the Open. Obviously, you get one spot. And then I think there was one other event he said for the year there's 2 spots that are PGA Tour events. He's not playing Bay Hill. He's not playing the 2 or 3 events on the PGA Tour that are signature events that get spots into the Open.
I mean, I think the Australian Open is lucky to still have those 3 spots, because I've talked to the R&A people about this, and they keep track, obviously, of how their qualifiers do. And the qualifiers from the Australian Open, the record in the Open, not good.
Yeah.
Most of them are missing the cut.
Yep.
This year was a bit better. I mean, obviously, Leash got one, and, Curtis Luck can play, and the lad who won can obviously play as well. But you've had some odd names have qualified for the Open through the Australian Open, and I'm surprised that the R&A haven't said, hang on a minute, maybe 3's too many,
Which is, if Riggs Johnson qualifies, if we're going to call Riggs Johnson an odd name, I mean, I hadn't heard of him before that week.
Yeah, but 5 years from now, we might be thinking, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull his name out, probably unfairly, as an odd name that you just haven't seen before, that you're like, that's an oddball to qualify.
Yeah.
If he does that on a golf course, on a sandbelt golf course that is set up properly, fair play to him. And you know what? If he can qualify for the Open on a golf course that's set up properly, he'll probably play well in the Open because he's got those tools. Yeah. But if we're going to keep giving 3 spots to guys on courses that aren't set up properly, then what do we expect?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, it's I lament the demise of the Australian Open to the point it's at right now, I must admit. And it almost needs like a coup of you guys. All the players top players need to get together and say, right, we're going to go and get a sponsor. We'll do their job for them almost. That's almost what it's going to take, I think.
I mean,
it's asking a lot.
We've tried to help as much as we can, and we've been, like I said, we were promised a lot this year that we didn't eventuate. So, as Aussie players, we're quite frustrated. I think 2025 will be a big cornerstone for the Australian Open. If they turn around and do a great job of it, that championship's going to hold a lot of prestige longer term, and you're going to get a really great tournament. I think if we stick in the current format that it is, set up,
it's going nowhere. Yeah.
It's
they've got
dying a slow death.
They've got to get back to Royal Melbourne. I mean, one of the things, that's like appearance money, Royal Melbourne, I think. I mean, you get guys coming. Tom Watson came in 1984 just because he wanted to play Royal Melbourne and won the thing, and he hasn't been there since 1991. I mean, that's madness. Absolute madness. It's insanity. You've got maybe the best course, certainly in the Southern Hemisphere, and one of the top 10 courses on the planet. Yep. And you've got to use it,
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. We're all, look, I went through social media last week and looked at the comments from, people that are sitting at home watching, and it's a lot of negative feedback. There's not a lot of people that are really enjoying, Well,
the TV coverage wasn't great either, because I got up in the middle of the night and watched it, and
but it's so hard to televise that event with it being run the way it is.
Right.
Yeah. It's not the people in the telecast are doing the best job they can. It's just it's got to be so confusing for people to watch at home as to what's going on. It needs revisiting. I'll probably get slammed for everything that I've just said on this, but it needs to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. Moving right along. I wanted to ask you about you were brave enough to touch on the problems you had, mental health issues, in the past. So still a kind of, I think people are a lot more understanding of that kind of thing these days than they were, but there's still almost like it's not quite a taboo, but it's a brave thing to do. I mean, how do you look back on that and the decisions you made to speak out?
I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily any better understood in the way of we have very different problems from what other people have. Everyone in this world has problems. We have very different problems from what the people that are consuming the entertainment that we're putting on TV have, and that's sort of the crux of the whole thing. Is it's unfair for me to expect to know, to expect someone sitting at home to know what problems I have and even like comprehend them.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way that like I don't know what their problems are and don't understand them either. So that becomes tricky. I spoke out about it because I literally got asked about it as to, you know, why didn't you play for X amount of weeks?
Yeah.
I was just answering a question. I didn't come out as like a mental health advocate that like anyone needed to be treated differently or anything like that. I still look at some of the treatment that people get on social media, you know, abusive comments or messages or whatever, and it's not a great reflection on the people who send them.
No.
And I don't, you know, I definitely don't condone it. But also in a way, like we're paid to entertain people as professional athletes, and it doesn't give you a right to abuse us, but you got to expect that you're going to cop something if you don't play well.
It's okay to have, you know, constructive criticism and disagreements and, you know, and move on. I mean, I'm sure we don't agree on everything, but, you know, I'm not going to fall out with you about it, you know.
Yeah, but I think it'd be like it's like the Roads and Transport Authority being like, I don't understand why people speed. It just kind of goes with the territory of like, if you're going to be the national body for a road, you know, roads in a country, and you're going to have X million people driving on them, people are going to speed. Like it just happens. You're naive to think that it's not going to happen. You're naive to become an athlete and think you're not going to cop some abuse on social media from time to time when you say something silly or you do something silly. Like, you know, I carried on like a bit of an idiot on Sunday last week, and I logged into social media every day for the last 6 days thinking I'm probably going to cop something here because, like, you know what, I probably earned some of it. Because that's the nature of our job. The nature of someone who makes 50 grand a year.
It's very public, yeah.
The nature of someone who makes 50 grand a year, they go to work and they're not being watched by anyone other than their boss and their supervisor potentially. You know, they get 2 bits of feedback at the most. You know, we're paid to do what everyone else does for fun. We're paid a lot of money to do that because we do it in front of a massive audience. And like part and parcel of that is like, yeah, sometimes we get some people who want to give their opinion on how our performance was. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm probably a bit more.
Well, how did it feel for you? What were your symptoms, if you like? Because it's different for everybody. I know it's not a all encompassing. You say mental health; it's a different thing for almost everyone.
I think it probably comes back to like we're working 24/7. Like we might, you know, you finish on Sunday. We finish on Sunday and you don't play again until Thursday. But like every minute between finishing your round on Sunday and preparing for, you know, to tee off on Thursday, every minute is work. You know, whether it's like you can't, you know, maybe you can't afford to go out on Sunday night and have a few drinks because that means you sleep poorly on Monday and that means you get less done on Monday and you've actually got a lot to do on Monday. You know, whether it's like general life admin stuff of you're in a hotel and you've got to pack up, fly somewhere, get your washing done, get everything sort of ready for the week, and then you've got to go play a practice round. Then you've got to go actually practice and get better because you probably haven't won on that Sunday. You know, just getting your life back in order. It's, you know, most people finish their work on Friday and they can go do whatever they want on a Friday night and spend Saturday, Sunday recovering because they don't have to work outside of office hours. But, you know, we do. So it's like it's working 24/7 and then also being away from home. You don't have your support networks of friends, family, girlfriend, any of that around you. You're in a foreign country. You don't know what you're doing. You don't make a lot of money. So you don't have the option to fail so much either. Like if you make a wrong decision and it costs, you know, you miss a flight or you book a flight incorrectly and it costs you $2,000, you don't have the luxury of just being able to eat that cost.
Yeah.
You know, it's you just never switch off. That's sort of where it all starts.
And you kind of needed to, obviously.
Well, everyone does.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts from. So it's when you're not prepared for that, when you don't know what to do, that's where it comes about from. And then people deal with it in the ways they deal with it. Everyone goes different ways and coping mechanisms. You know, I wanted to be at home with my mates and family and, you know, this is a traveling circus, the golf world.
Yeah.
It's a traveling circus. It's not real life. There's so many things that happen out here that are not they are very much not real life. So getting away from that is important, and understanding that this is not real life. And I just was never getting the chance to get away from that.
Have you got the balance right now? I mean,
I think
has Liv helped you in that respect?
I got a pretty good balance now.
Yeah.
I don't, I don't have, my problems are very minimal now. I'm very grateful at the point at the point of life I'm in to not have very many problems at all. But I'm one of the lucky ones. There's not a lot of people in my shoes that don't have, don't really have any problems. So, I think I've got a pretty good work-life balance going on right now. But look, that can change as well. Poor golf then pushes you in different directions. You don't know how you're going to respond. Sometimes you'll do less practice. Sometimes you go more practice. That can have an effect on other parts of your life. It's it's tough. Like it's why the guys who do this well get paid a lot of money, because it's bloody hard.
Yeah, as it should be, of course. Yeah. I kind of want to finish up with looking forward a little bit. I mean, am I right in thinking you've joined the DP World Tour? Again, you were on a list, I saw.
Yep.
Yeah. That's an interesting decision, because you're going to get fined and suspended and all the rest of it under their current rules every time you play in a live event against a DP World Tour event. I'm interested in why you made that decision, and because it comes with hassle.
There's a part of it that is showing support with the guys like John and Tyrrell who should be playing the Ryder Cup.
And they will be, I'm sure.
And it's not just joining the European Tour to play the Ryder Cup. It's, we need to be...
Well, it's a moot point for you, obviously.
We want to, that doesn't matter for me, but we want to make sure that those guys feel like it's more than that. Talking about John and Tyrrell, it's more than just that. It's more than the Ryder Cup. It's like we should be playing against strong fields as often as we can.
Yeah.
So part of it is that. I think part of it is...
But you're not going to be able to play very often.
No, and I might not play at all.
Yeah.
I think the right thing to do when it comes to the world of golf is we want to show that we have intention of playing more golf against the best players in the world. So if we refuse to join the European Tour as members, we're showing that we don't care about that.
Yeah, but
that's not true.
I hear what you're saying, and I commend you for it. But the fact is, when you play in a live event in 2025, whenever the first one is, and there's a European Tour event, DP World Tour event going on that week, they're going to fine you.
So,
and you're going to be liable to a fine. Now, whether you pay the fine or not is, but you're going to be liable. And that seems to me like a hassle in your life that you could do without.
So you're right; they can fine me, and I also don't have to pay.
No,
it's not a court imposed fine, so I don't have to pay it. Mm-hmm. And what I was talking about with what's right and what's wrong. What's right from my side is to join the tour because we want to be playing against better fields more often. We want golf to coexist.
I get that, yeah.
The right side from their point of view is to also come to the party. If they don't want to do what's right for the world of golf as an ecosystem, they can claim that the right thing to do by their membership is to keep fining us and to keep suspending us.
Yeah.
But the right thing to do by the golf ecosystem is to have us all back together as one as quick as possible. And if they don't want to play that game, I'm not going to play their game either.
Yeah. I talked to Patrick Reed yesterday for 15 minutes, and he made the point, because he's joined the DP World Tour again, just as you have, and he made the point that he can't get his head around the fact that if you play on any tour, if you can play as many tours as you want, if you play the minimum number and keep your card, you should be able to play, as much and as often as you want. And it'd be difficult. I mean, so you'd be getting into playing 35 times a year or whatever if you wanted to keep your card on the PGA Tour, live, and all the rest of it. But if a guy is prepared to do that, his point is, well, why not? And he can't get his head around it. If you do the minimum requirements as for the qualifications that the rules that tours have, what's the problem? That's his deal.
Yeah, and look, I can understand why. I can understand why current membership wouldn't want it to happen. I can understand. I can understand their argument as to why they would want to keep fining us and suspending us. So look, I completely understand it, but
yeah, that's the rules as it stands right now. That's all they're doing is applying their own rules.
But if you want to cut your nose off to spite your face, I don't think you're going to end up in a better situation long term. Mm-hmm. And I think the European Tour continue to keep doing that. They have the option to make to be a great tour, to have more of us playing on their tour, to make better events. But if you're going to talk about understanding that, I don't understand why they want to suspend all of their players that were supporting their events at the back end of their career. If you look at guys like Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, Ian Poulter, Paul Casey, Henrik Stenson, who would go and play some of these events that weren't the biggest ones on the schedule.
Lee Westwood's a perfect example. I mean, I don't agree with some of the stuff he's come out with. He's been unnecessarily critical of the European Tour, I would argue, at times, not always. But he was a great supporter during COVID. I mean, he was at the level, he was a former world number one. I mean, the level of player that he represented wasn't playing in European Tour events in COVID, but he was there. He made the effort.
He was turning up to events.
And he didn't seem to get much credit for it.
He was turning up to events. He hosted the event at Close House. He was turning up to events that he didn't have to play, but it helped support the European Tour and helped get more eyeballs on that tournament to be able to run an effective tournament. So they want to get rid of those guys. They want to suspend all those guys. Okay. So who do you then turn to? You turn to the young guys that are coming through. Well, then they go and create a category for the top 10 players to go straight to the PGA Tour. So you guys like a Nikolai or Rasmus Højgaard, that was going to be the lifeblood of the DP World Tour for the next 10 years.
Kept them a bit longer.
Now
they were always going to play in America at some point.
Sure, but now you just sent them straight to America on a tour that is getting increasingly harder to keep your card, and you've got to play more golf.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand that
controversial thing, that top 10 cards thing. I mean, there's two sides to the argument. I'm not sure where I fall on it, but a lot of guys think, well, it's madness to give away 10 of your biggest assets every year, and others think, well, it's a great opportunity for guys that would go anyway.
Oh, it's a great opportunity. I think for Rasmus and Nikolai, it's an unbelievable opportunity. Like, I did it before that option was available. I went and played off invites over in America and got my card as a European Tour player, without needing that top 10 exemption.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter or salty or anything about that. I think it's great. I think it's for the players, it's great.
Oh, yeah.
For the tour, I don't understand where their logic comes from.
Yeah, well, that's the two sides of the argument.
Do not understand it at all, and I just can't. I can't get my head around some of the European tours, the DP World Tours, ideas and policies on how to make any of this run. I can't figure it out.
Yeah. Let's finish with the last question. Is almost a cliche question, but where would you like to be 5 years from now? What would you like to have achieved in the game? Because we're getting to your peak years almost.
Yeah.
Next
so I think there's sort of two aspects to it. There's a personal level and then a team level. So I think I want to see Ripper GC win more titles. Both like team championship titles and individual event titles.
Is the President's Cup on your radar?
To be honest, not really. I think, personally, majors, we've still got access into them through qualifiers or
if I was to grade you in majors, my assessment so far would be needs to do better.
That's that is the thing that's missing from my career. Any sort of good performances in majors, really. I haven't performed anywhere near my capabilities
on that. Why?
Just never. I was just never a good enough player, really, to be able to. Majors are played on big boy golf courses, and I just never had the ability to play well enough on them. When I needed to. But I've learnt so much being on this Ripper GC team. I'm really looking forward to the next time I'm able to take my skill set to a major, because I think I've improved a hell of a lot, and I want to see where it's at on a major level. You talk about President's Cup. I mean, you could fill a President's Cup team with the guys that are playing out here on Live. So I want to play a President's Cup team where I'm one of the best 12 players internationally that's on that team, not because I'm one of the 12 that's left to be able to play. So I'd love to play a President's Cup if we're all back and equal and, you know, we're playing against the best teams. But if it's not the best teams, I've got no interest.
Yeah, it means less right now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, if you're going to have Brooks and Bryson and those guys back to play for the US, and we're going to have Cam and Joaquim back to play for and Abe Answer and these sort of players back to play for the international team, let's have at it. But right now, right now the talk of the President's Cup is who should be playing, not anything to do with the actual event.
Yeah, I mean, they've gutted the international team, really, you know.
Well, you know, the argument is that the international team gutted itself.
Well,
you know, no one forced any of the boys to go to Live. But the reality is that you can't really call it an international team if you're missing minimum 6 of the best international players in the world off that team.
Yeah. So just to underline that, major win, how high is that in the priority list? Pretty high, I have to think. Somebody like you.
It would be great. I think my focus has probably shifted a little bit. You know, with my decision to go to Live, a big part of it was...
Well, you made it harder for yourself.
Yeah, but it was also, if you look at the broad scheme of things, winning a major has a massive impact in Australia, you know, for golf. Like, golf is booming right now, and it can't not be because of Cam winning the Open 2 years ago. They can't be a coincidence. And you look at when golf has been booming in Australia, it was when Greg was winning majors in the 80s and 90s.
High-profile sportsmen, not just golfers. Yeah.
And then we didn't win a major. You know, Jeff won in 06. We basically didn't win a major for 20 years until...
Well, Mail didn't. You know.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's
Carey was doing
not
all
a
right.
great comment from me, but men's golf, we didn't win a major there for the best part of 20 years when... up until when Jason Day and Adam Scott sort of had their little run there.
I always thought that, you know, there should be more. I mean, it's surprising to me that there's so few Australians, male golfers, have won majors.
If you look at, I think like an interesting stat would be like world number ones and Australian and major winners. So like, I would compare us to South Africa as a country that is, you know, out of the loop of, you know, the major tours. You know, it's I think Australia does pretty well. I think we've had 4 world number ones from Australia over our time. I think Greg, Jason Day, Adam Scott. I feel like I'm missing one.
Can't think.
On the men's side anyway. Might only be 3, but there's only been 25, 26 guys that have got to world number one. So if you look at it like per capita rate, we're doing unbelievably well there. And you look at South Africa, and I think, did Nick Price get there?
Yeah.
So Nick Price got to world number one. I think he's the only one from South Africa.
Well, he's Zimbabwean, but
Southern
Africa.
Jeez, I'm doing well here. Aren't I? Have South Africa had a world number one then? I don't know if they have.
Has Ernie been?
I don't think Ernie ever got to world number one.
I think he did, but you might be right. I couldn't argue with you.
If Ernie did, that's the only one, right? So if you look at that, we're performing really, really well. You look at major winners; they got a hell of a lot of major winners.
Yeah.
You know, Charles Schwartzel, Louis Oosthuizen, Ernie won 4.
Well, you go back as Gary
Retief Goosen. I feel like there might have been one other that was around that time as well. And then, you go back to Gary Player.
Yeah.
South Africa have won a lot of majors. We haven't.
Yeah.
So I think...
Well, there's only one Australian male golfer has won more than one of the majors.
Yeah.
Which I find extraordinary, really.
Yep. So I do think we just haven't played well in the majors as a country. I just think... like other than probably Augusta and St Andrews, you know, you look at the golf we play in Australia being sandbelt golf a lot. You know, that's our premier golf courses, and they're just not set up like major golf courses. You know, they're very, very different. They're great, but they're just very different from major championship golf courses. So I don't know. Maybe there's something in that. Not 100% sure, but we could definitely do that. That would definitely be something as a nation, we'd like to see an improvement on, I think.
Yeah, well, let's hope that happens. And as I say, Lucas, thank you for your time. I've enjoyed the chat. I hope you have too.
Thanks, Huggy. Hopefully you edit this nicely for me.
No, don't. Yeah, there's no editing, don't worry.
Well, that's it for episode 133 and our first week back in the new year. And a big thanks to both John Huggan and Lucas Herbert for taking the time to bring us that chat. Well, that was a strong start, but we plan to continue in that vein here at The Thing About Golf, so I hope you followed the show so you don't miss this on our next.
I'd love to see a position where the game is quicker. I mean, I love watching the best golfers in the world, men and women, play golf. I'm less enthusiastic about watching them think about what they might or might not do.
That's former R&A Rules Chief David Rickman, next time on The Thing About Golf.